Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm really glad you decided to join us today because we are exploring a massive, honestly sprawling financial force.
Yeah, sprawling is definitely the right word for it.
Right. We're talking about an entirely parallel financial system, one that operates largely out of sight, right under our noses, and it's moving a staggering $240 trillion globally.
Ah,
It's known broadly as shadow banking.
it's a critical topic to understand, especially given the rapid shifts happening in the global economy right now. The sheer scale of capital moving outside the traditional regulatory perimeter has completely reshaped how systemic risk functions.
And our grounding source for this exploration is as fresh as it gets. It's a white paper published literally today, March 6, 2026.
Hot off the presses.
Exactly. It's titled The Shadow Banking Surge, Risks, Trends, and 2008 Parallels. It was authored by Trent Grinkmeyer. He's a partner at Best of U.S. Investors in collaboration with Grok, which is built by XAI.
And what's great is that this research synthesizes data from the Federal Reserve, the Financial Stability Board, the European Central Bank, and, several other regulatory bodies.
It gives us a really clear empirical view of what's happening in these opaque markets.
It does. But the synthesized data paints a picture that's complex. It requires a sharp eye to fully contextualize, particularly when you start looking at the speed of the current growth cycle.
Let's put a number on that speed right up front just to show the scale of what we're dealing with. U.S. bank loans to these shadow entities jumped an incredible 33% in just over a year.
Which is just a massive capital rotation.
Massive. We'll get into the exact billions shortly, but a 33% surge in a financial sector of this magnitude, it's wild.
It's a rotation that absolutely demands attention. I mean, understanding these modern risks is crucial right now, whether you're, say, prepping for a major finance meeting, structuring a corporate treasury strategy, or just looking to protect your personal investments.
Because we're operating in a 2026 economy marked by persistent inflation, complex geopolitical tensions, and what researchers are calling AI froth, not to mention evolving cyber threats.
To be truly well-informed today, you have to understand where the liquidity is actually coming from and where it's going.
Right. And before we get into the mechanics of that flow, we should make a quick note about our approach today. The source material dives into various regulatory policies, government oversight gaps, and proposed legislative solutions.
Yeah, it gets quite deep into the policy weeds.
It does. But as always, we're here to impartially explore the data and the findings exactly as they're presented in the paper. We aren't taking sides on any policy debates or, endorsing specific political viewpoints.
Our mission is strictly to decode the research so you can understand the ideas and the raw facts. Knowledge is most valuable when it's understood and applied objectively.
Absolutely. Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly is a shadow bank? The acronym commonly used in the paper is NDFI.
Right, which stands for Non-Depository Financial Institution.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you hear NBFI, Non-Bank Financial Institution.
But functionally, how does an NDFI operate differently from, say, the regular bank down the street?
The core difference really comes down to the liability side of their balance sheet. An NDFI provides traditional banking services. They originate loans, manage investments, provide credit intermediation, offer insurance.
They perform the critical functions of a bank.
Exactly, but they do not accept public demand deposits. You can't just walk in and open a standard checking or savings account with them.
Which changes their entire regulatory footprint.
Completely. Because they don't take public deposits, they don't carry federal deposit insurance, no FDIC coverage.
Right.
And because they aren't managing federally insured retail deposits, they face much lighter regulation. They aren't subject to the same strict capital requirements, liquidity coverage ratios, or stress testing that traditional licensed depository institutions face.
So how do they get their money?
Instead of using customer deposits to fund their lending activities, they rely on wholesale funding. They borrow heavily from traditional banks, or they issue commercial paper and other short-term securities in the capital markets.
And I think it's important to point out that you probably interact with these entities all the time without realizing it. Real-world examples from the source include mortgage companies, consumer finance companies, and peer-to-peer lenders.
Yep. And on the institutional side, we're talking about hedge funds, private equity, venture capital, mutual funds. Insurance companies and broker-dealers fall under this umbrella too. What's fascinating here is the irony of post-2008 financial regulation.
Oh, this is a great point from the paper.
Right. After the global financial crisis, we saw the implementation of massive sweeping reforms like Dodd-Frank and the Basel III framework. The explicit goal was to de-risk the traditional banking sector, make the system safer.
And to an extent, those reforms were successful. traditional banks are demonstrably better capitalized today than they were back then.
They are. But the real economy's demand for credit didn't just vanish. Middle market companies still needed leveraged loans. Developers still needed commercial real estate financing. The demand for higher yield, higher risk credit remained.
So as traditional banks retreated due to those strict new regulations.
The activity naturally migrated. The reforms inadvertently pushed the riskiest financial activities directly out of the heavily regulated daylight and straight into the lightly regulated shadows.
The risk didn't go away, it just relocated.
Precisely. Relocated to the NDFIs, where it could operate with more flexibility and a lot less oversight.
And the resulting growth has been staggering. Globally, shadow banking assets now exceed $240 trillion.
That number is hard to even wrap your head around.
It really is, and they're growing twice as fast as the traditional banking sector.
To put $240 trillion in perspective, that is roughly double the entire global gross domestic product. We're talking about a volume of capital moving through lightly regulated channels that is historically unprecedented.
Let's dive into the specific data from the Federal Reserve to see exactly how fast this acceleration is happening in the U.S. right now. The paper breaks down the FRED data, specifically the Federal Reserve Economic Data H-toward-8 release.
Which is great because it tracks weekly aggregate data on bank assets and liabilities.
Right. And the trajectory up to late February 2026 is wild. In January 2025, traditional bank loans extended to NDFIs sat at $4,415.4 billion.
So roughly $1.4 trillion.
Exactly. Now fast forward just over a year to late February 2026. That outstanding loan balance surged to $1,889.3 billion.
Almost $1.9 trillion.
That represents the 33% jump we teased earlier. In just 13 months, traditional banks increased their exposure to these shadow entities by nearly $500 billion.
And this growth isn't a statistical anomaly or a one-time blip. When you drill down into the weekly data, you see this steady compounding momentum. Just looking at the transition into this year, there was a 2.4% month-over-month increase going from December 2025 into January 2026 alone.
It's sustained.
Highly sustained. The weekly data throughout February 2026 shows consecutive gains every single week. It underscores the sheer volume of deal flow happening outside the traditional system.
And what's great is that this data is highly accessible. The paper points out specific tools so you can track this momentum yourself.
Which is so empowering for an investor.
Totally. You can monitor the weekly FRED updates, check FDIC press releases for near-weekly banking activities, or use resources like the Compliance Alliance. Watching the flow of this capital in real time gives you a huge macro advantage.
Tracking it is essential, yes. But analyzing the underlying structural vulnerabilities attached to that capital is where the real value lies. Recent 2024 data from the Financial Stability Board indicates that $76.3 trillion of these shadow banking assets are concentrated in explicitly risk-prone segments.
And those high-risk segments are growing at 12.7% year over year.
So that we need to look at what those risks actually are. The paper distills them down to 6 key threats lurking in the sector.
Let's tag team these. First up, systemic interconnections.
This is the structural fragility we just touched on. The European Central Bank has issued severe warnings about this. NDFIs rely heavily on funding lines from traditional banks. So if a major shadow bank faces insolvency, the traditional bank that extended the credit line takes an immediate hit.
The interconnectedness means a localized failure becomes a systemic shock.
Exactly. And that interconnectedness is even more fragile when you look at risk number 2, liquidity mismatches.
I love the analogy the paper uses to explain this. It's essentially funding a 30-year illiquid loan with cash that you might be asked to return tomorrow.
That's the perfect way to visualize it. Imagine an institutional fund locking its capital into a 5-year private equity loan. But they allow their own investors to pull their cash out on a daily basis.
If the market gets spooked and everyone wants their cash overnight,
the fund simply doesn't have it. They can't liquidate a 5-year loan in 24 hours. We're seeing cracks form from this exact mismatch in private credit right now. The paper references recent defaults in companies like Tricolor.
Which leads right into risk number 3, high leverage.
Right. Former Goldman Sachs CEO Lloyd Blankfein has been warning about hidden leverage amplifying losses. Because NDFIs operate with less transparency, regulators can't see the true extent of the leverage being utilized.
So a small drop in asset values triggers margin calls, forced selling, and a vicious downward spiral.
Which naturally brings us to risk number 4, regulatory gaps.
This one is alarming. The UK Treasury openly admitted to having a limited grasp of the shadow banking sector's full exposure.
When a major financial capital says they don't have a firm handle on the data, you have a serious visibility problem.
In the U.S., there's proposed legislation like the Close the Shadow Banking Loophole Act to force more transparency, but regulation always lags behind financial innovation.
Always. And this lack of visibility feeds risk number 5, macro instability, driven by slower traditional bank credit forecasts for 2026. As traditional lenders pull back, shadow banks aggressively step in to maintain their yields,
Taking on increasingly marginal, high-risk loans.
which degrades the overall credit quality in the macroeconomy.
Finally, we have risk number 6, geopolitical and cyber risks.
The Bank of England recently probed a £2 billion collapse, and it specifically highlighted how modern technology adds entirely new layers of vulnerability. A cyber attack on a key NBFI infrastructure provider could trigger a liquidity crisis before anyone even knows what systems are compromised.
Here's where it gets really interesting. When you synthesize all these data points, the $240 trillion scale, the leverage, the liquidity mismatches, you start to see a very gripping comparison emerge. We're looking at stark echoes of the 2008 global financial crisis.
The parallels are difficult to ignore. Leaders like Jamie Dimon are basically smelling a crisis. There's a growing consensus that the underlying mechanics look eerily familiar.
The instruments have evolved, but the architecture is practically identical. In 2008, the risks were hidden in CDOs and a housing bubble. Mispriced, highly levered, interconnected.
Today, in 2026, the risk has just changed its address. It's hidden in private credit leverage, an $18.4 trillion U.S. household debt load, and an ongoing commercial real estate crisis.
Not to mention the 2026 AI froth. Immense speculative capital pouring into AI, decoupling valuations from fundamental cash flows. And those overvalued tech assets are increasingly being used as collateral.
So while 2008 was triggered by housing, today's catalyst could easily be a cascading wave of defaults in CRE or an AI flash crash forcing margin calls. But the most crucial difference between then and now is the contagion speed.
In 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed, and the contagion played out over weeks and months. Today, global contagion would spread exponentially faster.
Hours, if not minutes. Algorithmic trading and digital clearing networks move capital instantly.
So what happens if a panic starts?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we run into an incredible paradox. Bank capital is genuinely stronger today than in 2008. But because NBFI assets are now double the global GDP, containing a shadow banking panic might be impossible.
We saw a preview of that with the Dash for Cash in March 2020.
Exactly. Widespread runs on unregulated funds could freeze global wholesale funding markets almost instantly. Even heavily capitalized traditional banks would be stranded if interbank lending ceases to function.
So what does this all mean? How do we translate this into actionable takeaways for you, navigating an uncertain 2026?
The paper outlines 4 clear protective steps for U.S. investors. First, monitor. Don't fly blind. Set up alerts for those FRE and FDIC reports we mentioned.
Watch that $1.9 trillion loan balance.
Second, diversify. Pull back from high-leverage private credit vehicles and opaque alternative yield funds. Lean into transparent liquid assets where you can clearly identify the leverage metrics.
Third is stress test.
Simulate how your portfolio would handle sudden rate hikes or widespread defaults in commercial real estate. Identify and hedge those vulnerabilities before shock hits.
And fourth, advocate. Support better oversight and standardized reporting for the NBFI sector to prevent this contagion from spilling over into the real economy.
Shadow banks provide crucial credit, but that efficiency can't be permitted to generate catastrophic systemic fragility.
Let's do a quick recap. We started by learning what NDFIs actually are, institutions executing traditional bank functions without retail deposits. We uncovered the historical scale of $240 trillion in shadow assets.
And that massive 33% surge in U.S. bank loans to these entities.
Right, reaching nearly $1.9 trillion. We analyzed the stark warnings, the 6 key structural risks, and those gripping echoes of 2008 hiding in modern 2026 factors like AI froth and cyber threats.
This raises an important question, though, to leave you with. We know traditional banks have nearly $1.9 trillion out in loans to these shadow entities. But where do traditional banks get their capital?
Often from everyday retail deposits, standard 401ks, savings accounts.
Right. So if a crisis is triggered by an AI flash crash or a modern cyber threat, how can traditional banks truly protect themselves when they are the very ones funding the shadows? Are everyday retail investors inadvertently providing the foundational liquidity, keeping this highly leveraged system afloat?
That is a phenomenal final thought to mull over. The capital always flows downstream, and sometimes we're part of that current without even realizing it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the March 2026 data. Keep asking those hard questions, look past the traditional headlines, and stay curious.